back to this Overwatch Battle Royale. We haven't worked out quite everything, but we've definitely been speaking.
This is going to be our brainstorming session.
Yeah. Yes. I'm also
So,
just going to keep a notepad around because if honestly we could send an
these
email.
These are $1 million ideas that we're having.
Feels like it.
Blizzard is going to write us a check for $10 million once they hear this.
Be great.
They're going to be like, hire those people. Get them on board. $10 million relocation package to
Austin, Texas. Is that where the Overwatch developer hub is?
No, I'm pretty sure they're in LA or somewhere in California. I think the Austin people are BattleNet.
Yeah. Oh well.
Anyways.
So, are we going to go with
2.
the shorter or longer? Because longer, I think, would be better suited towards the specialty that we just ended on.
Let's explain what this idea is before we get into more discussion.
Okay.
So, if we were making Overwatch 2, right, and we're like, we got a message down and said, these Battle Royale games, they're hot.
Yep.
They're definitely not on their way out and dying. We gotta get on the ground floor with a Battle Royale game. In Overwatch 2, how do we do it? So here's our idea, right? So Overwatch 2 is gonna include this new concept of leveling up your characters. We have no idea what that looks like, but we think that this mechanic could be the progression mechanic inside this Battle Royale game, kind of akin to like a League of Legends or a Dota, where you start at level 1 and then go up to level 5. Actually, what we're thinking is that this would be more like Heroes of the Storm, which is a game where the entire team shares a level. So each team would have, like, say, 3 people. They will each pick an Overwatch hero, like Tracer, Reinhardt, and Mei, and they'll all start out level 1. The team's a level 1. And then as they'll have certain ways of leveling up their heroes, the team will become a level 2 up to, like, say, level 5 or whatever it ends up being. And as they do, they, like, unlock their new abilities. Maybe they just start off with guns or whatever and no abilities, and they, like, unlock them over time, or they actually do level up. That's not the main importance. The idea is, in a lot of these Battle Royale games, the progression is you pick up better loot, right? Mm-hmm. But that's not really thematic to Overwatch. It doesn't really fit because, like...
Yeah, what we're doing here...
As fun as it would be for Tracer to pick up a Reinhardt hammer...
What we're doing here is doing, like, a Battle Royale switch from on-the-floor Halo and Unreal Tournament, weapons played across the map, to Call of Duty loadouts. Don't necessarily... What? Yeah.
Yeah. Although Call of Duty has a Battle Royale game too, where I think you loot. I haven't played it, so I don't know.
Well,
but yeah. It's basically Overwatch. Like you pick a character, you have the abilities of those characters,
and especially with the leveling progression that they already have shown us a little bit of in Overwatch 2, having that in a Battle Royale, which I think could tie up somehow into the map limiting sector. Like every time a map would close in on itself and it reaches that point, maybe your team would get an XP boost, and then you wouldn't get that XP boost if you were downed.
Yeah. Speaking on that, how does a team level up? How does the team get XP boost? We think this is actually going to be multiple ways of getting level up. So that could be one way where, like, if you get within, let's say there is this shrinking circle. Although I think with this other mechanic we're about to talk about, doesn't necessarily have to be that. So there's the shrinking circle. You get inside of it, maybe you level up. One of the core ways we're thinking about leveling up is having these sort of side objectives that each team is given and assigned to, a mission that this Overwatch or Blackwatch squad needs to perform. And so maybe it's like, there's this Tesla coil in the Gibraltar facility. Right?
I just came up with a pretty good side mission. What if the teams themselves were the ones closing off the map, and side missions were to close off a specific street or block?
That's a great idea, but like these could be multifaceted. Where like, one team, maybe an Overwatch team, maybe they're split, maybe they're not,
Mm-hmm.
is going in to try and activate a Tesla coil to say power this shield generator or whatever that's going to enclose the area off. Another team, for instance, might get so the first team needs to go in to an area. It's like a mission and perform some task within that area. And if they perform that task successfully, they will level up or gain some XP.
Mm-hmm.
However, that will work. Other teams may have missions in that same area.
Oh,
So
here
they may be
comes the
given a
juicy.
mission where they need to disrupt that area or whatever. But all of these teams are opposed to each other. So it's going to kind of push teams to go to the same area to perform tasks in order for them to level up, which is how they will naturally progress. You don't want to be level 1 at the very end of the game against a level 5 team that went and completed all their missions.
Oh yeah.
Another way you could get XP is just by eliminating another squad.
The classic.
So there's the classic, like, so you're not forced to do these objectives, but like there is a definite benefit to doing so as you will progress quicker.
And I really like the idea of teaming up for an objective in a battle royale, just temporarily on a side mission.
That's definitely a possibility where maybe two teams have the same objective and two teams have the same counter objective, and so you have this temporary let's work together, right? Like we're fighting for the same thing.
And then the emotional draw of if those teams are the only two left, you have that mutual respect, but we have to win.
Yeah. So, and this could also be some kind of replacement for circle mechanic as well. Maybe the objectives, as the game moves closer and closer together, maybe you have a time limit. Like, let's say the objectives are forced. Like, you have 2 minutes to complete this objective. The circle doesn't necessarily enclose, but the objectives for every single team start to get closer and closer together.
Yeah.
To eventually where all the objectives are in one building and you have to do the objective. So it doesn't have to be an actual circle that encloses you, rather than all the team's missions eventually collide.
Mm-hmm. And then this could lead to all sorts of maps within the Overwatch world. I just had an idea of what if you're being Overwatch trying to save people. You have different objectives for that, but it's a flooding town, and the flood itself is just forcing you in. You could reach the outer limits of the map due to high buildings and such, but a lot of the ground level terrain would block or would be impassable.
Yeah, and maybe the flood or whatever that you're speaking of was caused because, some other team was doing their mission that caused that, like a Blackwatch team.
Yeah, maybe center map, similar to Apex Portal area. It's super high capacity, high tier loot zone. They did something that changed the entire map.
Speaking of Apex, respawning. So these are team things. We are imagining each squad will be somewhere between about 3 people, actually. We feel that's a good number for this sort of game mode.
Very much. Plus, you can keep the tank, assault, and healer. Meh.
Yeah, that's a good idea. Although you don't necessarily have to do that, and maybe, although there is some precedent in Overwatch with the archive events, where they're 4 players. So, Overwatch has shown that in the story, missions are generally completed with a 4-member squad. So maybe a 4-member squad, just out of the idea of that's how the story has sort of portrayed how Overwatch performs their squads.
It might also be something to workshop. I'm not sure if the 4-person squad is a remnant of having 4 controllers on a console or not. Just thinking about it meta.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm sure the Overwatch team did those events with plenty of options and came to the conclusion that 4 was the best. And that's what we think should happen here is that whatever happens to be the best should be the one that goes for it.
Oh yeah, none of these ideas are set in stone.
No. Brainstorming. But another idea we had is what happens when a player dies. There's some different games that do different things. Fortnite, for example, I believe you're dead. You're done. I don't think you can revive. Maybe you can. I haven't played Fortnite in a while, but Apex came out. And Apex had this revive mechanic, that respawn mechanic, if you will, that allowed the player to pick up, like someone on the team to pick up a dead member and just go to a respawn point. It's pretty simple, makes sense, gives the players still alive some objective to work towards.
It works for that world that we don't know too much about, but for Overwatch, I don't think that it'd fit too well to have just random drop points everywhere in a scenario where Overwatch would be involved.
So another idea we had is that whenever a player gets eliminated, rather than that player just sitting dead waiting for their team to revive them, they get sent to a smaller side map in the game where they get grouped up 6v6 with other players that have died. So you're going to be temporarily put on a team with other combatants in the Battle Royale. And this smaller map is going to be one of like 3 game modes. We imagine it's going to be a rotating thing that's randomized each time, but there could be a specific game mode. The ideas we were thinking were Push, which is the new Overwatch 2 game mode, Capture the Flag, and King of the Hill.
Something very familiar with the standing Overwatch audience.
And these wouldn't be full-sized Overwatch maps. These would be smaller scaled
More like Overtime, Capture the Flag type. Maybe a little bit bigger.
Like the smaller aspect. And each team of these 6v6 that have been ad hoc put together will then fight in this little skirmish. And the winner of that skirmish, the winning team, will be redeployed onto the battlefield as reinforcements. So they'll do another drop, flying in through a drop ship, and they can drop wherever they want. They could just drop immediately, go off on their own. We imagine most people will want to jump back into their team, so they'll try to land on their team members. This does mean that players don't just like teleport back. So there's going to be like reinforcement drops. But it's this bittersweet moment because, like, oh, your team member just came back, but so did 5 enemies who are not on your team, right? The pacing of this respawn match is going to have to be critical so that these don't happen too often.
Heavens no. If it would just be an endless match.
Maybe even being disabled towards the end of this match to make things progress quicker. Especially because there isn't going to be much of a penalty to dying because your team shares a level. It's like Heroes of the Storm, your team shares a level. So and that's the only progression, or the main level of progression. So when your character does come back, they just go up to whatever level your team is currently on, so the punishment isn't direct, right? The punishment is the sort of loss in the sense that your team is less effective, so they won't be leveling up as quick.
Yeah, in that alternate,
and they have
in that ultimate play mode, they wouldn't gain any levels or experience that their alive teammates would.
No, I mean they would because it's all shared. Like,
well, yeah, the team dynamic would, but no personal benefits.
No personal benefits, right? And the team will lose out on the sense that maybe it's harder to complete objectives with only 2 people, and they kind of lose some agency over their teammate coming back. Maybe there's some mechanic that allows them to supercharge their player or whatever, and that's a good idea. What would be the story context for all of this, right? Like, it doesn't.
Before we move on too much further, I want to just add in the idea: what if bringing a team back alive is initiated by a group that has already lost a teammate, at least one teammate? So it becomes a side mission that they can start up to bring their guy back, but it would bring back enemies.
Interesting. I think it should just be a time thing. Maybe some sort of calculation is done that it tries to say, oh, every 5 minutes I want to do a respawn, a reinforcement drop. It can't precisely calculate that, depending on how well matched the teams are as they're fighting. But, let's say a minimum of 5 minutes passes. It doesn't start. So the first 12 die.
Yeah.
That's when it first begins. The first 12 people die. It'll start. If that match takes less than 5 minutes, the next one doesn't start until the 5-minute mark is hit.
It might be a good idea to have a full Overwatch regular King of the Hill or something, and just have them play best of 3, because that should be enough time.
I think like a push would really be
a push. I don't know how that works. That's why I'm not really speaking on it.
That's the payload's in the center.
Yeah.
And both teams are pushing it to the other team's end.
Like TF2
so
bomb, I think it does that.
Yeah. I think that's how that works. But anyways, before I forget, going back to like the story, Overwatch story is important, but gameplay always seems to be the most important. But how would we wrap this up? Just some brainstorming.
Mm-hmm.
And this could be like a simulation, like a battle simulation that Overwatch has done to help harden its combatants, and the idea is, they're not actually killing each other. This is just some sort of like simulated game of why are there multiple Reinhardts or whatever fighting around. They could say, oh yeah, all those other players, they're not actually real players. They're just analyzed versions of you or whatever, right? Like, how would you pair against yourself, kind of thing.
I still kind of like
that's controlled by like say Ana or something, because I had this idea where like maybe there's something your team can do to like affect your dead members. So maybe you can do something that allows, like, if your two team members are alive, they can perform an objective that gives their dead team member an Ana boost, or something like that. Like some sort of benefit to like Ana's maybe controlling the training ring, or at least the death.
I had a different idea, but I figured that it could be Sigma doing the training ring. Like, you're knocked out for the count. You're in an out-of-body experience, and here comes the man who's lost in the universe guiding the fallen players. I like that.
Yeah, that's interesting. Either way, just how would the story contextualize that, and maybe add to some of the flavor of the gameplay, right? Because we want to give the dead team members more than just sitting around. Maybe they can earn their respawn. And this would be a FIFO queue, who the first 12 people to die will get in, and then when a team loses, the losing team could either the losing team should probably go first because their team has been without one long enough, or they could go back to the end of the queue. I don't know how it should work. Something like that.
I don't understand what you're saying here.
Oh, okay.
So if the entire team is wiped?
So let's say we're in the what should we call this? The
map.
Smaller overtime death thing.
Mindscape.
Mindscape. Okay, so you're in the Mindscape, right?
Yeah.
I'm not sold on that yet, but I'll use it. So
okay.
You're in the Mindscape, and your team loses, right? You're the first team, and your team loses. And let's say there are 12 people dead and 12 people fighting, right? And your team loses. Does your team go next?
Okay.
Or does the other 12 people go in?
I don't think you should go next.
Because there's like a thing where you get back to the end of the queue, but the longer you're out, the more likely your team is going to die because they're down a member.
Mm-hmm.
So, like...
But you lost in what is the regular map, then you lost in the Mindscape. I think if there's room later on...
out? Yeah, maybe you should just go to the end of the queue.
End of the queue if you wanted to stay in, but that might when you're in a battle royale, it's a lot of the time it is you join, you're out. I
Yeah.
don't think you
What
should.
happens when your entire team dies? Does your entire team go to the Mindscape, or is
No.
that the termination?
I think that's just out.
That sounds about right to me too. Because quick turnover rate, right? When your entire team dies, get in queue for the next game.
Yeah.
Right? So, because at that point, when your entire team dies, that's a lot of lost
Opportunity.
XP gain.
I
Oh, should we cut it here?
Yeah, let's cut it here.
Okay.